1948 was one of the biggest crimes of the 20th century, and one of which we know very little about. It's the crime of where Palestine was wiped off the map, physically, literally, culturally, and sadly historically. Palestine was a country that neighboured Syria, Lebanon, and Egypt. There was a train track that ran through from Egypt, through Palestine, through Gaza, into Turkey, and right into Siberia and Turkey. This was the entire Middle East. In 1948, there was a plan to wipe Palestine off the map, and it was executed. It was called Operation Dalit. Operation Dalit was the Israeli plan that had been concocted years before to wipe the Arabs off the land. In Operation Dalit, they talked about expelling anybody in the village. They talked about burning down the houses. They talked about expelling the women and children to different parts of Palestine. This took place all throughout 1947 and 1948. This was the ethnic cleansing of Palestine. Over 8 months between the end of 1947 and 1948, over 750,000 Palestinians were forced from their homes. Half the population of Palestine was emptied. 531 villages were destroyed in 8 months. That's half the population of Palestine emptied of their inhabitants. 11 urban neighborhoods removed of their inhabitants. Haifa, a city of 70,000 Arabs, was reduced to 4,000 Arabs in just a few days. They were moved on by the British, who were there during the British Mandate between the First World War and 1947. And the British guided the Arabs away to the port, where the Israelis, or the Haganah, the future Israeli army, shelled the people at the market, killing dozens to make sure that they would go on their boats and leave Palestine forever. When they left their houses, when they left their towns and villages, many had 10 miles, 15 miles, 20 miles, 50 miles to walk to the nearest place. This was the start of the Palestinian refugee population that now numbers over 7.1 million around the world, the largest refugee population in the world. Take Lid. Lid and Ramla had populations of 50,000, and they were removed to the point that only 1,000 remained in Lid. During that, there was a massacre in Lid, at which point Ben-Gurion, the future Prime Minister of Israel, said, push them away, kill anything that moves, kill any Arab that moves. These were the words used by the generals and the future Prime Ministers of Israel. These were the crimes committed against the Palestinians, and it was not just the fog of war. These were crimes well and truly established during the colonial era, when the Arabs and the Africans and the Indians were fair game for exploitation, colonization, and for the Palestinians, ethnic cleansing. And this is how it happened. And it wasn't just in the fog of war, it was carefully planned. In 1937, Ben-Gurion again said to his son, we must expel the Arabs and take their place. The British were presented with maps of a future Jewish state, a future Israel with no Palestinian Arabs in it, and they asked them, where are the Arabs? The plan was to ethnically cleanse Palestine. So then you had in Gaza refugee camps looking like this camp here, only 1,000 times bigger, with 1,000 times more tents. Over 2/3 of the population of Gaza now are refugees. They are refugees from 1948. You ask them where they're from, and they will tell you a village that does not exist anymore. They'll tell you they're from Beersheba, or Mejdal, or Barbara, or Jaffa, and all of these places do not exist anymore, or they've been emptied of their Arab inhabitants. This is the reality for most of the Palestinians in Gaza. They are right now in one of the world's largest open-air prisons. I was there in Gaza for 2 years. and I saw myself the horrific conditions that they're still in. And the NGOs in Gaza are contributing to the problem. They're still giving rice and milk like it's an environmental disaster when these people are on the end of one of the biggest crimes of the 20th century and on the end of an ongoing and vicious siege, apartheid and system of control. That it's a shame on the West, it's a shame on everybody around the world that they've turned their backs on this. A population over half of which are children. We are going to be ashamed when we look back on the long and horrific history that has been meted out against the Palestinians while we not only watched, we collaborated. We were complicit in the ethnic cleansing of Palestine. Britain watched on. Britain facilitate the rise of the Zionist movement in Palestine, which had only one goal, which was to empty the population of its Arab citizens, the indigenous population, the people that had been there for thousands of years. This is a crime against humanity, and it began with that, and it continued with many more crimes against humanity ever since. And we've seen the worst of recent times. In 2014, I lost 2 of my students in Gaza, one of which her entire family was wiped out by a bomb from a drone. We still see banks like HSBC and Barclays, they've still invested in the Elbit company, which is the largest maker of drones, because the Israelis can practice in Gaza. They've got the perfect laboratory to test these weapons that they regularly get feedback, and have got the 60% of the world's drone sales because of the way in which they can practice on the population of Gaza. The people that have already been forced from their homes once, twice, and now live in a permanent state of siege with F-16s in the sky dominating the skyline. And you've got the tanks and the jeeps and the guns at the border areas shooting at the farmers, destroying the farming industry. And then you've got the gunships dotted along the horizon, shooting regularly at the fishermen. These are the crimes that are ongoing right now in Gaza. If you're in Gaza, you will see these planes above you. You'll see these drones dropping the bombs on you. You'll see the lines across the sea where you see the gunships chasing after the fishermen. This is now in Gaza. This is what everybody's looking out on, and again, the majority of the population are children. We will look back in shame that we allowed this to happen, that we allowed years and years of discrimination, persecution, and horrific mass murder of the Palestinian people. And that's why we're saying no more. That's why today, the day after the Nakba, the day after the 15th of May, we're going to say we'll never forget. We will never forget, and we will make sure that everybody knows about 1948. We'll make sure that everybody understands the criminal attacks on the Palestinian people that started a long time before Gaza. And this is why we will say we've had enough of the propaganda. We've had enough of the lies. We've had enough of the people excusing 500 children murdered in 50 days. That's right, 500 children murdered in 50 days in Gaza. I was talking to the student that was murdered about a week before, and her entire family was wiped out. But still people come and apologise for it, and it is sick-making. It makes me sick, and it makes me sick to think of their family and what a wonderful family it was, and the fun exchanges we had when she was about to get married. She'd had 2 little kids by the time that bomb came through her roof, and that ended her entire family. That's the crimes being committed against them all the time. And they're from a place that actually has been turned to rubble. Already their houses were destroyed a long time ago. This is a mass crime against humanity, and it's an abomination that people should dare to try and diminish the crimes against the Palestinians. Yeah. And it's sick-making. It really is sick-making, because that is a large amount of humanity that's been wiped off this planet. And they've tried to reduce their history. They've tried to claim that when Ben Gurion said we must expel the Arabs and take their place, it doesn't mean that. That's what it meant. That's what they did. They wiped out Palestine. Any atlas around the world says Palestine. Any atlas around the world said that's where it was. The vast majority of the population were Palestinians, according to the British census. A horrific empire, but they did know how to count. And then they were forced off their land, over 80%, over half the population. This is a crime against humanity, and we will not forget, and we will continue to fight, because people do not believe it anymore. After Gaza, people are looking at the other crimes that Israel's committed in history. After Gaza, people are looking at what happened in 1967 when another 300,000 Palestinians were forced off their land. People are looking at the massacres in 1956 in Khan Yunis and Rafah, where over 400 people were killed. People are looking at the recent attacks on Gaza in 2009 when 1,400 people were killed, over 320 children. And they're looking at the 108,000 still homeless people now in Gaza, with nothing that has been brought into Gaza, because there's still this hermetic siege, this sickening crime against humanity. Again, a population, the majority of which are children. I do feel that the two people here who are trying to apologise for these Israeli crimes, I do feel that if they met some of those children and some of the families of those children and the families of the students that were murdered in Gaza during the attacks with her whole family, I do think they might just change their mind and have a bit of humanity for once. But we won't stop, we'll keep fighting, and we'll say we will not forget Palestine, and we will say we will not stop until Palestine is free. Free, free!
Palestine!
Free, free!
Palestine!
Free, free!
Palestine!
Free, free!
Palestine!
Right now we're going to hear from Gaza, and we have Khalil Shaheen, who is from the Palestinian Center for Human Rights, who is in Gaza, and he will report on the latest situation in Gaza. And it's really important that we listen to the Palestinian narrative, because that is what counts. That is what we should all be hearing. And really our biggest job as international solidarity with Palestinians is to echo and increase the volume of the Palestinians themselves, because they're often trapped, they often can't leave. In Gaza, most people have never left. Most people can't leave. Their borders are blocked. Their goods are controlled, what comes in. In fact, Israel had a calorie count for each person in Gaza. Again, over half the population children, they had a calorie count as to what each person would require. And this is below the level that the UN recommends for human beings, of course. This is the sickening scientific methods by which Palestinians are being controlled and segregated, and all the towns and villages and schools cannot grow, cannot expand, because they have to go to Israel for permission, and they, of course, they don't grant it. These are the crimes against humanity we're talking about. So if you wait a minute, I'm going to pass you over to Gaza right now, and we're going to hear from Khalil Shaheen of the Palestinian Center for Human Rights.
Okay, thanks a lot for this great opportunity. For Palestinians, as you know, comrades, sisters, and friends, brothers, I would like to appreciate this event and to support all solidarity with Palestinians, as 2015 marks the 67th year of forced displacement from and within their ancestral homeland. This ongoing Nakba, the catastrophe, continues to be perpetuated through Israeli denial of the Palestinian refugees' rights of return, the right of self-determination, and various other Israeli policies which give rise to forced displacement, including forcible transfer and as a grave breach of international law. The policies are framed within the wider gamut of perpetual human rights violations being committed on both sides of the green line across the occupied Palestinian territory and Israel. As you know all, during the summer of 2014, Palestinian residents of the Gaza Strip, more than 75% of whom are refugees, were subjected to a 50-day Israeli aerial bombardment and ground assault. At least 2,215 Palestinians were killed, with the homes of 108,000 more destroyed or severely damaged, while the already crippled civilian infrastructure of this besieged enclave received further extensive damage. At the peak of the assault, 520,000 Palestinians were internally displaced inside Gaza. Over 500,000 of the Gazans being internally displaced, accounting for 34% of its total population. At the same line, inside occupied East Jerusalem and so-called Area C, accounting for more than 60% of the occupied West Bank land, Israel pursues a policy of forcible transfer of Palestinians by way of inter alia, unlawful and appropriation, home demolition, failure of residency, restrictions and land access, and extensive settlements expansion. This multitude of grievous rights abuses is conducted against a backdrop of discrimination, harassment, and violence perpetrated by Israeli settlers and security service alike, and reflected in Israel's rapidly advancing plans for forcible transfer Palestinian Bedouin communities on the Jerusalem and periphery to urban township in the Jordan Valley. Yet, with widespread Palestinian apathy is not limited to the border of Mandate Palestine, but extended to the millions of individuals who make up the international Palestinian diaspora. Of particular concern is the fate of those in Syria, with UNRWA finding that 500,000 Palestinian refugees have been directly affected by the country's ongoing conflict. Many of those refugees will now have experienced secondary or tertiary displacement, whilst the level of human suffering for residents of Yarmouk camp in Damascus has escalated widely following extreme violence on the failure of the international community to ensure the delivery of desperately needed humanitarian aid and assistance. These aberrant developments, along with the predictable failure of U.S.-led peace talks in 2014, highlight the necessity of providing a durable solution of Palestinian refugee, which is based upon the just application of the international law rather than political bargaining. The continued failure to deliver the Palestinians the full protection to which they are entitled under international law, countered around their inalienable rights to international law, centered around their inalienable right to return to their ancestral homes, and equivocally confined in Article number 14 and
we've only got 2 more minutes, is that okay?
this is a great sign for us as Palestinians. It's well appreciated, and I think impunity is continued and ongoing. If we are victory for peace, justice, we need to continue our struggle with all of you worldwide to continue all activities, all events for gaining the Palestinians their fundamental rights. Thank you for it.
Thanks a lot. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank a lot. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm just going to read a couple of poems by Mahmoud Darwish. He was a poet, and he was also part of the Palestinian resistance over a long time, and he was exiled from Palestine. A lot of his poems reflect that sense of missing his homeland. So this one's called Another Day Will Come. Another day will come, a womanly day, diaphanous in metaphor, complete in being, diamond and processional in visitation, sunny, flexible, with a light shadow. No one will feel a desire for suicide or for leaving. All things outside the past, natural and real, will be synonyms of their early traits, as if time is slumbering on vacation. Extend your lovely beauty time, sunbathe in the sun of your silken breasts, and wait until a good omen arrives. Later we will grow older. We have enough time to grow older after this day. Another day will come, a womanly day, song-like in gesture, lapis in greeting and in praise. All things will be feminine outside the past. Water will flow from rock's bosom. No dust, no droughts, no defeat. And a dove will sleep in the afternoon in an abandoned combat tank if it doesn't find a small nest in a lover's bed. And I'll just do this one, like it's called And We Have a Land. And we have a land without borders, like our idea of the unknown, narrow and wide. A land, when we walk in its map, it becomes narrow with us and takes us to an ashen tunnel, so we shout in its labyrinth. And we still love you. Our love is a hereditary illness. A land, when it banishes us to the unknown, it grows, and the willows and adjectives grow, and its grass grows and its blue mountains. The lake widens in the soul's north, wheat rises in the soul's south. The lemon fruit gleams like a lantern in the emigrant's night. Geography glistens like a holy book, and the chain of hills becomes an ascension place to higher. To higher. If I were a bird, I would have burned my wings, someone says to his exiled self. The scent of autumn becomes the image of what I love. The light rain leaks into the heart's drought, and the imagination opens up to its sources and becomes place, the only real one. And everything from the faraway returns as a primitive countryside, as if Earth were still creating itself to meet Adam, descending to the ground floor from his paradise. Then I say, that's our land over there, pregnant with us. When was it that we were born? Did Adam get married twice? Or will we be born a second time to forget sin? Thanks.
Song for freedom, and it always comes to my mind moments like this. I'll sing a couple of verses for you. No more freedom, oh more freedom, no more freedom over me. And before I'd be a slave, Lord, I'll be buried in my grave, and I go up to my Lord, and I'd be free. There'll be no more pain, no more sorrow, no more sorrow over me. And before I'll be a slave, Lord, I'll be buried in my grave. And I'll go up to my Lord, and I'll be free. Free Palestine, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah.